really interesting topic, credibility theory and general insurance project. So just get comfy, stay curious, and hopefully you'll enjoy the session as much as we do. And before we begin, let us start with the Indonesian national anthem and hymn test. Please stay attentive.
Indonesia tanah airku, tanah tumpah darahku. Di sanalah aku berdiri, jadi pandu di bumi. Indonesia kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah airku. Marilah kita bersatu, Indonesia bersatu. Hiduplah tanahku, hiduplah negeriku, bangsaku, rakyatku semuanya. Bangunlah jiwanya, bangunlah badannya, untuk Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, anakku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, anakku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya. Materku yang ku cinta, ibu yang memberi Teresa, tak membara semangatmu, cita-citamu tak kendur. 10 November 45 mendorong menjiwaimu, mengangkat kepala tujuan dengan tekadmu yang teguh. Membina bangsa atas dasar Pancasila dan Undang-Undang Dasar 45 landasan juangmu. Materku yang ku cinta, ibu yang memberi Teresa, banggalah kokoh kepemimpinanmu membina putra-putrimu. Menuntut teknologi yang canggih, berbudi agung dan cerdas, menuju kesejahteraan bangsa dan umat manusia. Materku, kan ku turut pimpinanmu, jadi pejuang yang takkan kenal letih membangun negeri. Hidup Indonesia, Mama Materku jaya.
Vivat!
Okay, thank you. Next, we would like to invite the Secretary of the Actual Department, Bugalu Octavia Siswono, to give opening remarks. To Bugalu, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Kak Ciko. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. and our distinguished speaker, Mr. Ken Lim, lecturers, and also students from Department of Actuarial Science. We are very pleased to have Mr. Ken Lim in here today with us. He's a consulting actuary from Milliman, especially from Malaysian branch. And in here, he will share his valuable knowledge and also experience, especially related to topic of credibility theory in general insurance projects. And I believe that this topic is very interesting and also important topic, especially if you want to learn about general insurance in general. So I hope that all students in here can gather a lot of knowledge and also information from Mr. Lim. And also you can ask a lot of questions, I believe. So Mr. Lim can share his experience and you can gain a lot from that. So once again, thank you so much, Mr. Lim, for taking the time to be with us in here. And we know you have very busy schedule and we truly appreciate about your presence in here. I will not make this speech any longer. Thank you so much. And I hope everyone enjoyed today's event. I give time to again, Sachiko. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bugalu, for the warm words. Now, allow me to briefly introduce today's speaker. So in today's session, we're honored to have Mr. Ken Lim with us. Mr. Ken is a consulting actuary at Milliman, currently based in Kuala Lumpur. He is a fellow of the Institute of Actuaries UK and also a fellow of the Actuarial Society of Malaysia. He joined Milliman in 2018 and has been working on consulting projects across Southeast Asia and Greater China, especially in the property and casualty insurance field. And previously, he worked with a multinational general insurer in London before moving to Milliman. Mr. Ken has experience in areas such as statutory liability valuation for general insurers, actual review and pricing using JLM and machine learning models, M&A actual support in Asia, fraud and abuse analysis for health insurers, and many more. He also conducts actual trainings for insurers in the region and support product development projects. He holds a bachelor degree in actuarial science from the London School of Economics and Political Science. We are very excited to have him here today, and we hope to gain many valuable insight from his expertise. So without further delay, please welcome Mr. Ken Lim. For Mr. Ken Lim, the time is yours.
Thank you very much. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay? Yeah, okay. All right. So maybe let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see the screen clearly. A second. Is the screen coming up?
Yes, Mr. Ken.
Okay. All right. So let's start. Thank you very much again for inviting me. I would say that just now I think Pak Adi, you mentioned that I'm your first international guest lecturer. Coincidentally, you are also my first international lecture schools, right? So I have been presenting in different countries, but mainly to working adults. I have done a bit of student lecture in Malaysia. This is the first time actually someone invited me to give an international lecture in Indonesia, and I appreciate the opportunity as well, right? So thank you very much again for your invitation. For the next, I would say 40 minutes or so, I will go through a topic called credibility theory in general insurance projects. I picked this topic is because I understand that it's one of the topics that you are currently covering in your academic semester. I thought, to give you a bit of real life application, how we use things, and to give you a bit of insights or different perspective in terms of, how the things that you learn in school is being used in real life. Sometimes what you learn in school is a little bit more complicated than what in reality. Sometimes what you learn in school is a little bit simplified compared to what is in real life, right? So we will see some examples today, and after that, we can open up for Q&A. As a start, I suppose the first thing about credibility theory, before we deep dive into this, one thing I wanted to start with is that if we think about it, insurance is about prediction under uncertainty. So for life insurance, you are basically predicting when people pass away or when people get ill. For general insurance, you are trying to predict when will the accident happen, and if an accident happen, how expensive the accident will cost you. And to do this, we always need data. But in reality, data is either limited or volatile, or data is not perfect. There's no perfect data, right? And what will happen in the end of the day is that you always got this dilemma of what I see versus what I expect. Okay, so in some example, let's say I have a very small book or I have a very small portfolio. I see some experience that is very good, but I know that the bigger industry or the whole Indonesia is telling me that the experience is not good, right? An example will be electric vehicle, for example, right? Electric vehicle is a topic that a lot of people talk about in the industry at the moment, right? You have your Teslas, you have your BYD, you have your new electric vehicle brand coming, and in Indonesia, maybe in one of the company that sells electric vehicle insurance, you see the experience is either very good or very bad. But in China or in the rest of the world, the experience is something else, right? So there's always this dilemma of what I observe versus what I expect. And credibility theory or credibility, it's trying to find the balance between these two, right? How do I balance between the signal and how do I balance between the noise? So this is about credibility theory, and this is about what matters the most on a day-to-day basis as an actuary. And I believe this formula is something you would have learned in school, or this is this formula is something that you are about to learn in school if you have not learned in school. Essentially, the core idea of credibility theory is that how much weight or how much percentage do I put in my own experience versus how much weight or how much percentage do I put in expected experience, right? So we call it Z, right? So you can have Z times something plus 1 minus Z times the other thing. So Z is a number between 0 and 1. If you want to believe 100% of what you see, then Z is equals to 1, and otherwise Z is equals to 0. So in other words, the larger the Z or the Z, you trust a little bit more on your own data. If you don't trust your own data, then the Z or the Z is a little bit smaller, right? And it's just a number between 0 and 1. And in the end of the day, where do we apply credibility? Where do we use credibility theory? I am going to give you 2 examples today. One is on pricing, one is on reserving. How do we use credibility theory in both cases? For pricing, in the end of the day, it's about blending my own loss experience with the industry experience. The other one is reserving is how do I blend what I see now versus what I expect it to happen later. So without further ado, I will start with the first application. The first application is in reserving. And for those of you who are aware or not so much or not too aware, there is a very famous reserving method, what we call a Bonhoeffer-Ferguson method, when it comes to reserving. And this is a very commonly used method in the industry. So if you decide you want to be a general insurance actuary later on, or you want to become a reserving actuary, right? This will not be a surprise to you. You will see this name quite often. So let's start. The problem statement when it comes to reserving is that there are three main challenges when it comes to reserving. Okay, so for those of you who are not familiar with what is reserving, so essentially, if we take a step back, if you think about it, when we sell insurance product to a policy holder, what exactly are we selling to them? We are not selling an item like, if I am an Apple company, I sell iPhone, right? There is an item that I can sell to you and you get an iPhone back. There is a tangible goods that you get through this purchase and sales process. But as an insurer, when you sell someone an insurance, what exactly are you selling them? We are not selling any tangible items, but in fact, we are selling them a promise. We are selling the policyholder a promise to say that if anything unlucky happened to you, I promise you that I will pay you certain amount of money, or I promise you that I will make sure you are taken care of because I will take care of your bills, I will take care of the losses, I will take care of all the expenses. So what you sell to them is a promise. And as a result of this promise, you owe them an uncertain amount of money. Why I say uncertain? Because if you think about it, if I am an iPhone seller, I sell you an iPhone, what I owe you is an iPhone, and that iPhone will cost X million of rupiah. However much I owe you is fixed, right? You can tell me exactly how much I owe you because the item has a price tag to it. But if it is an insurance, when I sell to you, I say, I will promise you that if you get into a car accident, I will help you fix your car and I will take care of your expenses. But the question is, how much does this promise cost? 2 million rupiah, 2 billion rupiah, 20 million rupiah? No one knows, right? So this is why actuaries are required, because when you sell the promise, you are selling them an uncertain amount of liability to yourself. And that's where reserving comes in, because you have to use some technique to estimate how much this promise costs. And this promise costs X amount of money or Y amount of money. How do I quantify that money? I don't know, right? And that is why you need this thing called reserving. You need to try and estimate how much this promise will cost based on historical data, based on all sorts of things. And this is exactly what reserving is doing. Reserving is trying to quantify the amount of promises that the insurance company have made through selling, and then you set aside the money, right? If you go and tell 1,000 policyholder and tell them that I will protect you if you get into car accident, then you need to set aside a best estimate of 1,000 car accidents potentially happening, right? That is the whole idea of reserving. And the challenge of reserving is that, one, claims take time to come up, right? If I sell you policy today, I don't know how much will I need to set aside, because you might not have a claim now, or you might have a claim only 9 months later. Or even if you have a claim now today, this claim will change over time, because hospitals will charge you different prices, because the car parts will increase, because the workshop will increase their price. We don't know. So it takes times for claims to come out. And the next thing is that data can be immature, especially in the early days. And last but not least, it's about estimating the losses with incomplete data. You back to my point just now, right? When you are selling a promise to policyholder, okay, good enough, you are selling a promise. But how do I know how much this promise worth? I will try to guess, but how do you guess based on incomplete data? So these are some of the key challenges. And then on the right-hand side, you have 3 different ways of reserving, right? The first way is chain ladder. The second way is called expected loss ratio. And the third way is what I call the BF method, which is the credibility theory part that comes in, right? So let's just do a bit of diving here. In front of you, it's what we call a claims reserving triangle. Okay, so if you see here, each row is when the accident happened. Okay, so each column is how much will the claims, what we call, develop over time. So you can see here that in this case, every year, there will be around $500 worth of claims starting at year 0. Meaning, let's say for claims that happened in 2021, at the end of 2021, there is around $500. Okay. 1 year later, meaning in 2022, the same amount of claims will become $555. It goes up by 10%. The reason is because sometimes the workshop takes a bit later to process the claims. Sometimes you need to go to court. Sometimes the hospitals delay, things like that. So you can see that the claims keep developing over time. All right. But then if you see here, this is quite stable, because no matter which year, like 2022 or 2023, it always starts with 500 more or less dollar worth of claims, right? It's every year that there is $500 over of claims. And then after that, it will develop by another 10%. It will develop by another 10%. There is a rhythm and there is a pattern. Okay, there is a pattern. So if I know that every year is $500+ and there is a pattern, then I can use what we call a chain ladder method or a loss development method to predict each year how much claims will I have to pay ultimately, right? So I can sort of predict all these A, B, C, D, E, F using a formula or using a pattern. For example, if I want to predict what is A, what I can do is I take 605, multiply by something called a DF tree or development factor tree, which essentially is just the ratio of 683 divided by 650. And then I can guess what is A. So A is just 605 multiplied by 1050769, and it becomes 636. It's a ratio, right? So if I want to predict what is C, what I need to do is I need to find out what is B first, right? B is 579 multiplied by this ratio, right? And the ratio would be DF2, and DF2 is 650 plus 605 divided by 555 plus 568, and the ratio is 1.1175542. Okay, so what I need to do is I find the ratio, I multiply by the ratio, I get B. And then I multiply by another ratio and I will get C. So C is 579 times DF2 times DF3 and I will get 680. And similarly, I can do the same thing. I want to find what is F. I would take 556, multiply by a ratio to get D, multiply by a ratio to get E, and then multiply by another ratio, I get F. So chain ladder, it's a very ancient but very trusted method. It's a method that every actuary will need to use when it comes to reserving. But of course, the catch here is that you need to have a very stable triangle. You need to have a triangle that allows you to do all the ratios and the ratio is stable. Then you can believe what you see. On the other hand, there is another method, what we call loss ratio method. Okay, and what this loss ratio method is sort of the other extreme. Okay, it's trying to tell you that don't believe whatever you have seen so far, but believe in your gut, believe in your assumption yourself. So if I take this example again, right, this is the chain ladder assumption. If I express it slightly differently, I put it in a table, right? So I have the latest amount here. So if you recall, 683, 605, 579, 556, right? Okay, 683, 605, 579, 556. Yeah. So I have this information called earned premium. This earned premium is how much money I received. This is how much claims that has been reported to me. And if I divide the claims by the earned premium, I can get something called a loss ratio. So essentially, it's just saying that how many percent of the premium I receive is used to pay claims. So in the past, you know, even though they all started with 500 something and then it ended up 683, but if you express it as a loss ratio, you can see that they have different loss ratio at different time. You have 70%, 68%, 65%, 55%. Different period give you different loss ratio. Okay. So what happened here is that I am saying that, okay, I don't believe whatever that has happened. I don't believe the actual loss ratio. I believe in my gut feeling. My gut feeling tells me that it should all be 68% ultimately. Okay? It should all be 68%. I don't believe whatever chain ladder tells me. So even though chain ladder tells me that the final amount is going to be 636, 680, and 723, because these three numbers, 636, 680, and 723 comes from chain ladder, comes from here, 636, 680, and 723, right? My gut feeling tells me that it's going to be 68% and it corresponds to 604, 608, and 690. Okay, so now you have two sets of number. The first set of number comes from chain ladder, comes from a ratio, comes from something that is predictable. Another set of number comes from either your gut feeling or something that the company truly believes in. Who is right, who is wrong? Who is right, who is wrong? Right. So now you are the CEO of the company, right? And the CEO of the company tells you, or more like your staff tells you that, boss, we need to set aside reserve now. Then I got two methods. One, the method tells me that it will be 636, 680, and 723. Another method tells me that it will be 604, 608, and 690. The number here doesn't look big in terms of difference, but trust me, in real life, we are talking about 10 millions, 100 millions rupiah, right? So whatever method you choose will have a big impact on your profit and loss, right? So this is when the BF method might come in. Because on one hand, you are basically just blindly believing in the data. On the other hand, you are blindly believing your expert judgment. BF method, it's a nice way for you to blend between what you observe versus what you believe, right? It's about credibility. I give some credibility to what I observe. I give some credibility to what I believe. So in this case, the BF method, I'm not going to go through the math, right? Because it's a bit boring. But what you need to know is that the BF method gives weight to what you observe. It also gives weight to what you should believe. And the weight that they use is what we call a 1 minus 1 over CDF, which is the formula. But essentially, it's just the percentage of unreported, right? So it gives more weight to the observe when the time is a bit older, and it gives less weight to the observe when the time is a bit newer, right? So in other words, they are saying that if the accident year is old, meaning like 2019, 2020, and 2021, those are long time ago. Time has passed. I will believe what I observe because it's probably to a certain extent the truth, right? It's already 6 years. Whatever should happen already happened. All the uncertainty should finish. So for older accident year, I give 0 weight to my expected. But for the latest years, like 2024, because it's a very new year to me, I will only give some weight to the observe. I will give some weight to what I believe. So it gives you a credibility by time. And the BF method is particularly useful, especially when you have what we call a large loss. So just now, if you recall, I said that in this very stable book, every year you started off more or less around $500 in terms of claims, right? And then it moves in a very predictive manner. So 0 to 1, it will go by 10%. 1 to 2, it will go by another 10%. And 2 to 3, it will go by 5%. It has a very predictive manner of moving. But if, let's say, you have a large loss now, suddenly this number become 1,556. I add another 1,000. If I go with the same ratio, I will get quite a big reserve amount. Is because when you multiply the ratio to a big number, you get a very big number, right? So you have a big number multiplied by the ratio, you get an even bigger number. But sometimes when you have a big number, the large loss, it wouldn't develop the same way as the normal claims, right? For example, let's say today I have a large loss, I have a big fire, or I have a big earthquake in Indonesia. This big earthquake, it will not develop the same way. It's because if it is an earthquake, the government will get involved, the insurer will get involved very quickly, and there will be a lot of complaints, there will be a lot of news out there. People will settle the claims very fast, right? They will pay the claims very fast. Normally, this large loss, it will just get paid almost immediately, right? So if you use the normal chain ladder method, it will overstate what is the amount of reserve you need to do. But if you use a BF method, you will get a smaller amount and probably closer to the truth. What I try to say here is that we use this so-called credibility theory to, in real life, is that we give different weight to different situation or different methods depending on the specific situations. If it is a very stable book, then we use chain ladder. If it is a not so stable book, then we will use loss ratio method. If there is large loss or if there is a bit of uncertainty in between, then we will use credibility theory, and BF method is one of the credibility theory that we use. Now, I'm going to show you something in real life. In front of you, there are two tables. These are real reserving example. These are real reserving example when we do reserve. And you can see that when we do reserving, nowadays what the software will do is the software will calculate all the different numbers using different methods, right? So the software will straight away calculate the chain ladder method. If you use chain ladder method, these are all the numbers for each accident quarter. If you use incurred BF method, these are all the different numbers using BF method. This is loss ratio method. These are all the different loss ratio method numbers. And then as an actuary, what we need to do is we just need to select what method we want to use, right? And in this case, you can see that for older years, I will just rely on chain ladder method. I will select chain ladder. Not so old, maybe I do a bit of BF. Sometimes even the most recent one, I use loss ratio method. But in another line of business, same company, you can see that I choose different things, right? So the latest quarter, I use BF instead of loss ratio method. And then in the second latest quarter, I use something else. I don't use BF, but I use a weighted average of 50-50. So it's chain ladder and loss ratio method half and half. So what I try to say here is that in reality, while it's true that credibility theory teach you a lot of different things, but credibility is not that straightforward. It can be a simple answer of judgment. It can be a simple judgment of half and half. It can be a simple judgment of using time, or it can be a blend. It can be anything, right? It can be anything that the actuary thinks is suitable, or the company thinks is suitable. Because in real life, sometimes we can't do what we want. Sometimes we have to do what the company wants. Sometimes we have to do what the management wants, right? So credibility is not just math, but it's sort of judgment, and it's a bit of things that guide us in order when it comes to making decision. Now, another application that I wanted to show you about credibility is pricing. So just now you have seen in reserving how credibility is by time, essentially, right? You are using time as your credibility factor, and you have seen examples of how time credibility can be a bit complex, but actuaries will often override this complexity by using a simpler method, right? I have a very credible number here, but I still choose to use something simpler. Instead of by time, I just do half-half, or instead of by time, I ignore it, I just use loss ratio method immediately. In pricing, I'm going to show you an example of the other way around. And you can see here the example I want to give you, and this is real example also. It's a concept called group health pricing. Now, let's give a bit of background for group health pricing. In terms of group health pricing, in Indonesia, or not just Indonesia, but in many parts of the world, right? When you join a company, or when you join an institution, you will be given something called a group health plan. So it's basically a company paying for insurance and says that under this group health plan, if you are sick or if you go to hospitals, the company insurance will help you pay the bills. Okay, so if I want to go to hospital, I can use the group health plans, and then I will be covered under the company insurance. Of course, different companies have different employees, different sizes, right? So you can have Pertamina that has tens of thousands or even millions of employees, and you can have a small company in Bali or in Bandung that only have 20 employees or 30 employees, is a small company that do trading, for example. Then when it comes to pricing, how do I price, right? How do I price? So I have two very specific piece of information. One is the company specific information. And in this example, the company is called XYZ, right? It's a company that has 30 employees. And then it comes to you and say, hey, I need to renew my plan. Tell me how much do I need to pay for the premium? And then you look into their experience, and then the experience says that in the past 2 years, these 30 employees of XYZ has average claim of 50,000 per person. Okay, so on average, everyone claim around 50,000 per person per year. Then after that, you say, hey, hang on, this is only 2 years of data and it's 30 employees. Let me check the portfolio data. So the portfolio data says that if I look at other company, on average, everyone only claims around 5,000. So this XYZ is claiming 10 times more than my average other client in my book. Which one should I trust? Is it because XYZ employee generally they like to go to hospitals? If yes, then XYZ is a bad risk to the insurance company, because these guys just keep claiming. But what if it's unfortunate because 2 out of these 30 people, they have cancer claims? You know, they don't do it deliberately, but it's just very unfortunate that they have cancer claims, and these 2 cancer claims bring up the average price or the average claim size to 50,000. Then is it fair that I penalize XYZ company because they incur 10 times more than the average? So it's a very realistic question, right? Do I charge XYZ more because they are 10 times more expensive than the average? Or it's just pure unlucky and I don't charge XYZ 10 times extra? You know, I know it's small group, it's volatile. So how do I balance this? This is where the credibility theory comes in, right? How do I give weight to company-specific data versus portfolio-specific data? Now, in your lecture or in your school module, there are 2 common approach that you probably will come across at some point in time when it comes to credibility theory. One is Bayesian credibility theory, where you have your prior, you have your likelihood, and then you have your posterior distribution. And then you can have different model. You can have Poisson gamma model. You can have normal model, right? And then you have all sorts of mu, sigmas. You have all sorts of Greek symbols that you need to calculate. You need to do integration left, right, center. Okay. So that's something you need to learn in exam. And that's something you need to learn for your actuarial exam as well. That's something, unfortunately, I also have to learn when I qualify as an actuary. Okay. There's also another thing called the, I don't know what is it called. They sometimes call it different name, right? They call it empirical bias. Sometimes they call it Bowman-Straub. Sometimes they call it Bowman credibility. You have your Z equals to N divided by N plus K, something like that. Okay, those are what you learn in school. But when it comes to reality, and when it comes to the group medical pricing that I described exactly, a few minutes ago, they use something a little bit more complicated in real life. They don't use your Bayesian, or they don't use your Bowman credibility. They have their own credibility that, the industry develop over time and they want to use certain things. No, this is the credibility theory or credibility formula. K1 plus n minus 1, K2 divided by 1 plus n minus 1, blah, 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 blah. Okay. What is the name of this credibility? I don't know. But this is something that it has been used. It's published. You can find the source here. And you can see that the credibility, it's not straightforward because you can have different kind of credibility to take care of different kind of situation. Like this is the basic one, and then the second one takes into account of turnover. So you remember I say group health pricing, right? Group health pricing, you are pricing for a company that has X amount of employees. But during that 1 year, the employee number will change because people will resign, you will have people coming in. So your credibility theory needs to take into account people leaving and people coming. And to make things even more complicated, in a big company, for example, like Pertamina or in a BUMN company, right? You will have different people at different grades. Or even in schools, right? You have different people in different grades. You can have lecturers, you can have professors, you can have senior manager, you can have director, you can have BOD, you can have BOC. Different company, different job scope, different ranks. Your entitlement is different. If you are CEOs, you are entitled to 300,000 benefit, for example. But if you are just a staff that just joined them as a junior actuary, maybe you are entitled to 50,000. So you will have all sorts of real life complications that will make credibility different. And whatever that we learned can be a bit too simplistic when it comes to actual pricing. The point I try to make here is that I'm not suggesting that you go understand the paper and to read how they derive all these credibility. I think it's too much. Even we don't do it at work, right? But what I try to share today is that in the two examples that I showed you, right? Credibility is about balancing data and judgment. It can be done either across time, which is like reserving, like the BF method is credibility across time. You can be done across group or across number of participants, right? So like pricing, it's actually a way to combine what actually happened and what you expect to happen. But the point I want to try and say here is that the real credibility is never a straightforward formula or a straightforward calculation, like where you press the button and you get a number. The real credibility, it's, you know, depending on judgment, depending on all sorts of stuff. And we use this as a guidance. We use this as a structure for sense to tell a story, but it is never a number that go out and say, look, I calculated this using integration or differentiation. Please take my number. It's never as easy. It can be simplified. It can be complicated depending on what situation you use. So I hope, you know, I give you enough exposure and examples to let you appreciate a little bit more what you have learned at school versus how it's being used in real life. I'm going to stop here. If you have any question you can ask, I'll try to answer.
Okay, thank you so much for the very insightful presentation from Mr. Ken. And friends, now it's time for Q&A. So if you have questions, feel free to just raise your hand or drop them in the chat. Okay, our first question will be from Vinaya Michael. Please go ahead.
Okay, hello, Mr. Khan. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Okay, I want to ask you because you've been explaining credibility to us and you also use softwares to calculate this. How important it is for us students to understand the basic fundamentals before using the softwares in application. Thank you.
I would say it's very important because while it's true that what you learn in textbook may not be 100% usable in real life, but to me, you need to know the basics and you need to know the under. I'm not expecting you to remember all the formula from your textbook, right? I don't expect you to tell me Bayesian, normal formula, what is the variance, what is the posterior variance, posterior mean, things like this, I don't expect you to know, but at least I need you to remember the basic foundation. Okay. Bayesian involves a prior distribution, right? Frequency severity, I need a Poisson gamma posterior if I'm using it. Or I need you to know that, okay, under what circumstances is credibility by time? Under what circumstances is credibility by weight, by group, or by number? Things like this. These are also basics. So yes, software will calculate the number for you, but you need the basics to guide your judgment in the end of the day.
So we need to know what to use and when to use it, in
Correct.
short. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, second questions will be from Maulana. You can go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ken. I would like to ask. So you said before that sometimes we have to consider expected from an experience. You have to like add in the weights. How do we ensure that our weights, the weights of our observation isn't biased? How do we ensure that we aren't biased in selecting the weights of the data? Is there is it instinctual or is there like a standard way in the industry, if I may ask? Thank you.
So to answer your question, how do you ensure it's not biased, or how do you know what weight you want to use, right? So let's look at this real reserving example. I use reserving example, okay? I use reserving example as a starting point. If you look here, if you look at these two rows, 2024 Q3 and 2024 Q4, these are the two rows, right? This here is the chain ladder method. This here is loss ratio method. This here is BF method. Yeah. So BF method itself is weight by time. And I can overwrite it again by coming up with another number and to say that, for example, in 2024 Q4, chain ladder method tells me it's 79,000. This is 100% own experience. Incurred BF is weighted by time, it's 192,000. Loss ratio is 0 weight on actual, so 100% judgment is 305. Weighted average is 192, and this is essentially just half to incurred, half to loss ratio, pure arbitrary weight without anything, just pure arbitrary 50-50. Okay. If you look at this example here, the modeler actually overwrite it by using this 50-50 instead of using BF method. And to answer a question, how do we select? How do we make sure we are not biased? Long story short, the answer is it depends on your judgment or depending on who is the actuary signing off. Because the actuary signing off typically would have a long experience in terms of making decisions like this, and they more or less know that what is the right number or what they think is the right number. So they will use their judgment. And is it biased? it's not biased towards data, but it's biased towards the actuary judgment. Okay. Is that the right way? Based on the existing structure and based on the existing design, that's the way that it is being designed. Because if you think about it, when you are the signing actuary, you are directly responsible for any number that you sign off. So if I'm signing off the number and I'm taking responsibility of the number, then my judgment is the best judgment, right? Is there a better way to address bias, or is there a more scientific way to address it? Yes, but will the software take over responsibility when things goes wrong? So if the software tells you that the best number is 754, and you are the signing actuary, it's your responsibility and it's your name, and you believe that it should be 500, then it depends on who you trust lah. You trust the software, then you need to take responsibility. If you trust yourself, then you take the responsibility for your number, but you can't take the software number and blame it on the software, right? So eventually, go back to your point. How do I decide on the weight, and how do I know whether the weight is biased or not? While there is scientific way for us to determine that, all this scientific way will not help you take responsibility for any decision that you make eventually. So it will still be a human judgment at the end of the day. And unfortunately, I don't foresee how this thing will change, because as an actuary, what is the most valuable thing is your judgment. And how do you develop judgment, and how do you know your judgment is not biased? It's by experience, it's by training, it's by different sort of things that you accumulate over time. I hope I answer your question.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ken, for the answer. It was very helpful. Thank you.
Any other question from the floor? Maybe one more?
If anyone has other questions or maybe follow-up questions, you can raise your hand or just type it through the chat. And maybe feel free to type or raise your hand and talk in Bahasa. Later, I will try my best to translate in English.
Hello, Jeremy.
Okay, I want to ask that you said before, like in real life, the Z rarely comes straight from a formula. Means like we we assume that like, or how we can determine the Z.
So in real life, the Z comes from okay. In real life, how the real Z comes, it will be most likely be from many formulas and from many different sources. Okay. What will happen in a reality situation is that if I am the actuary and I'm doing pricing, I will have Z coming from this formula. I will have Z coming from this formula. I will have Z coming from this formula. I can have Z coming from a judgment call that the underwriter says. And then I can have 4 or 5 Z in front of me. and then I will need to decide what Z I want to use. And it can be a multiple Z averaging one another. So you're applying a Z to different Z. You're applying different credibility to the different credibility things. It can be a number that you have used before or you use in other places, right? So to answer a question, the real Z, it will be a decision made based on multiple Z suggested by different topics or by different methods.
Okay, but if I use the example of the pricing, um, the Z, can I assume that the Z would be lower because like no, the can you show the pricing slide?
This one?
The pricing one, the example, nah, this one. Can I assume that the Z value is lower because like only
Yes, in this case, the Z value will be much smaller. Maybe 10% or 15%, I would say, based on my judgment. It's because, number one, there are multiple red flags in this situation. All right. One is there's only 30 people. Okay. Two is there's only 2 years of experience. The so-called golden rule of thumb is 5,000. That is my rule of thumb. I would believe that 5,000 is a good number for anything, for claims or for something to be credible. Why do I say 5,000? Because 5,000 is a number that, based on whatever that I have learned in the past 10 to 15 years of my professional life, whenever there's 5,000, the number it won't be too far from the truth. Okay. So to me, 5,000 is a good number, but 330 is just too small and it's only 2 years. So the real Z, will probably be 10 to 15 sort of range. In fact, if you look at here, this is telling me that if it is a 30 people, the Z will be more or less around 40%, right? Then Z is 40 on one hand. Professional judgment tells me Z should be around 15. And if I have Bayesian, if I have Boolean credibility, the Z is 25 and 30. Then I know that the Z will be in between 15 to 40. I will need to pick a Z in between this number. Then what do I pick, right? Do I pick 15 or do I pick 40? Then the question is, then how bad do I want this business? If I want this business very badly, I will go for a lower Z or a higher Z. Okay. If let's say this 30 employee, I give you an example, yeah. If let's say this 30 employee belongs to a company in Bali that sells coffee versus these 30 employees belong to a startup company, say Facebook in Indonesia, but it's a small team because Facebook just started their business in Jakarta. It's still 30 employees. Do you want the Facebook or do you want the Bali coffee shop? There's no right or wrong answer, right? Some company will say, I want Facebook because I want to have a big client in my book. I want to win their business. Then I give a smaller Z. Some companies say, no, I don't want Facebook. I just want stable life. I want stable. I prefer a small company because that's the strategy. Then I will use different Z. So, but then the reality is that, okay, Z will be in between 15 to 40%. Okay, pick a Z in between. Then you choose that. You choose which one you want. So there is a decision making on a commercial basis after all as well. So that's all I have for your question.
Thank you for your answer.
Okay, maybe because there was 3 questions already. Great questions, everyone. Thank you for your enthusiasm, and thank you, Mr. Ken, for the insightful answers. So now let me give a quick highlight from today's session, maybe. So today we learned that credibility theory is about finding the right balance between data and judgment, or as Mr. Ken said, balancing signal and noise. He showed how credibility helps actuaries blend actual experience with prior expectations, especially in areas like reserving and pricing. We saw how methods like the Bernhardt-Fagenson approach use credibility weights that grows as claim mature, and how similar ideas apply to group health pricing, where smaller datasets needs to be adjusted using wider portfolio data. And the main takeaway is that credibility isn't just a formula, it's also about professional judgment, context, and like storytelling behind the numbers. Because models give the structure, but actuaries give the meaning. Hopefully, this session gives us a better understanding of how credibility theory works in real insurance practice and why it matters. Okay. All right, everyone. The attendance link has been shared in the chat. Please take a moment to fill it out before we end the session. Okay, before we close, we would like to present an online certificate of appreciation to Mr. Ken for sharing his knowledge and insight with us today. Mr. Ken, thank you so much for your valuable time and inspiring lecture. We truly appreciate it. All right, now let's take a moment for documentation. Maybe I'll count down. In 3, 2, 1. Once again, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. Maybe friends, you can give some applause or reaction for Mr. Ken. Give reaction, guys. And now we will take a group documentation. Okay, because everyone has turned on their cameras. I'll count down now. In 3, 2, 1. There are 4 pages here, guys, so please be patient. Once again, 3, 2, 1. Again, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Great. Thank you, everyone. So that concludes today's international guest lecture. Thank you to our honorable speaker, Mr. Ken, and all the participants for joining us. We hope this session has been valuable and inspiring. So wishing everyone a wonderful day ahead. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you at the next international lecture, friends. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Ken. Hopefully,
Thank
if
you.
you come to Indonesia, you will like to attend ITS also one
Sure,
day.
sure. Okay. Bye-bye.
Jangan lupa mengisi absensi ya. Nanti saya ambil presensinya dari pengisian linknya. Oke, terima kasih semuanya ya sudah hadir. Terima kasih juga buat Sachiko, Pak Adi, Bu Galuh, dan dosen yang lainnya juga yang sudah menyempatkan. Ini saya end Zoom-nya ya. Terima kasih semuanya.
Terima kasih Bu, Bapak.
Terima kasih,
Terima
Thank
kasih,
you.
Bu,
Sampai
Pak.
jumpa. Terima kasih.